Nice. Yep. Strong is the new beautiful. What can I say? Thank you for joining me here at Audrey's Reading Area. Shout out to my grandbabies, Korea, Sanaa, D3, David the Third, that is, and Kaden. I love you guys and I miss you so much. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Alexa, what time is Audrey's Reading Area?
Audrey reads in her area live at 8 o'clock p.m.
Live, Live, live at 8, you guys. Yes, thank you so much. Don't forget to click like, click share, go to Audrey's Reading Area on YouTube and smash that subscribe button for me. I'm going to just jump right into the book. You know it's Black History Month. You know. So I have a very special book that I will be reading to you guys today. Who was Maya Angelou? Shout out to Brian Martin who sent me this book to read. Shout out to you. Thank you so much. I'm going to read about Maya Angelou. And this is her picture. A young girl whose grandmother sometimes called her Little Professor, an actress and calypso dancer who toured the world with a traveling opera, and one of the most celebrated poets of all time, Maya Angelou. We're going to jump into this book. It's a little long, it's a little lengthy, but we love Maya. Who was Maya Angelou? And there's very few pictures in here, but I will show you the ones that are there. In January 20, 1993, was a sunny and crisp winter day in Washington, D.C. Maya Angelou, a 6-foot tall, I didn't even know she was that tall, 6-foot tall, 64-year-old African-American woman stood on the steps of the Capitol building. She wore a black coat, bright red lipstick, and gold hoop earrings. It was the day that America's 42nd president, William Jefferson Clinton, was taking office. Maya was about to read her poem on the pulse of morning in front of 250,000 people. Millions more watched on their television at home. It had been 32 years since a poem had been read at a presidential inauguration. She was the first African American and the first woman ever to do so. Despite being a prize-winning writer, she felt nervous. I tried not to realize where I was, she said later. The crowd became silent and spellbound. She spoke powerfully in a deep voice that rose up and down like ocean waves as she read each line of her poem. The words called for peace and friendship between people around the world. It took her 6 minutes to read the entire poem. The last lines are, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning. When Maya finished, the large crowd rose to its feet and broke into loud applause. Woo, yay! They were just standing up and applauding. President Clinton gave her a giant hug and thanks for her beautiful words. Maya Angelou was a world-famous poet and writer. She was also a teacher, a civil rights champion, and a singer and dancer. And when she spoke, she had a beautiful and strong voice that was uniquely Maya's. Through her ideas and words, Maya taught people to live with love and to treat one another with respect and kindness. That's important, you guys. Bringing joy to others, especially if they were down or sad, was very important. Try to be a rainbow in someone's cloud, she said. Despite a tough childhood, Maya used her voice. She became a rainbow for the whole world to see. So this is chapter 1, Mama. Maya Angelou was born Marguerite Annie Johnson on April 4th, 1928 in St. Louis, Missouri. Her mother, Vivian Baxter, was a nurse and also worked as a card dealer in a casino. Her father, Bailey Johnson, was a doorman at an apartment building. Vivian and Bailey already had a 1-year-old son, Bailey Jr., when Maya was born. Bailey Jr. couldn't say Marguerite and called her Maya sister instead. That's how she got her name. Soon he began to just call her Maya. The nickname stuck. Maya's mom and dad did not always get along, and their marriage was not easy. They had divorced by the time Maya was 3 years old. Neither parent thought they could take care of their children on their own. So Bailey Jr. and Maya were put on a train heading to Stamps, Arkansas to stay with their grandmother. Kansas City, Missouri to Stamps, Arkansas. The Mississippi River over here. Annie, Mama Henderson, was her father's mother. Bailey and Maya traveled alone. They had tags pinned to their shirt sleeves explaining who they were and where they were heading. Fellow passengers felt bad for the two young children, only 3 and 4 years old, sitting all alone. I can't imagine nowadays, sending a 3 and 4-year-old alone on the train like that. Cannot fathom that. But they had to do what they had to do back in those days. They gave them cold fried chicken and potato salad, Maya remembered. Once Bailey and Maya arrived in Stamps, they moved in with Mama Henderson and her son, their Uncle Willie. Stamps was a segregated town, and Mama owned a small general store in the black neighborhood. For the next 4 years, they lived in a few small rooms in the back of the store. So we're going to talk about segregation for a second. Segregation is a system that keeps groups of people separated from each other. In the southern United States until the 1960s, black people were kept apart from white people by the Jim Crow laws. Under these rules, black children and white children went to separate schools. Black people had to live in separate neighborhoods, eat at separate restaurants, and even drink from different water fountains and sit in different sections of movie theaters. They had to sit at the back of the buses while white people sat in the front. In 1964 and 1965, the U.S. Congress passed laws like the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act that made this illegal. Illegal, meaning against the law. They can't do it no more. Mama was a strict but loving woman. She insisted that Bailey and Maya use good manners, go to church every Sunday, and help out in the store. Maya swept the floor and even helped serve the customers lunch. Mama also insisted Maya and Bailey keep themselves very clean. Each night in the bitterest winter, we would go to the well and wash in the ice-cold water, Maya said. Uncle Willie insisted his niece and nephew develop their minds. He encouraged them to memorize the multiplication tables and to read as many books as they could. Mama also praised her grandchildren for studying hard. She sometimes called Maya her little professor. Thanks to Uncle Willie and Mama, Maya fell in love with words. Her favorite writer was William Shakespeare. But all writers were her friends, she said. Throughout these 4 years in Stamps, Bailey and Maya's Bailey was Maya's real best friend. They spent almost all their free time together, playing games like hide and seek and follow the leader. He would sneak pickles out of the jar in the store and always share one with Maya. Maya was a big girl and darker skinned than her brother, and hair like black steel wool. Sometimes adults told Maya that she was unattractive and said her other unkind things about her looks. Bailey always stood up for his sister and made her feel better. This made Maya love him even more. Bailey was the greatest person in my world, she said. Chapter 2, A Child with No Voice. A Child with No Voice. One morning in 1935, Maya's father showed up in Stamps. He just showed up. He came to visit the children and stayed for 3 weeks. Then he took Bailey Jr. and Maya with him back to St. Louis, Missouri to see their mother. St. Louis was a lot different from tiny rural Stamps, Arkansas. It was a big city with tall buildings and paved streets. Maya said it felt like a foreign country to her. She couldn't get used to all the loud city noises. At first, Maya and Bailey lived in a big house with Vivian, their grandmother, Baxter, and their 3 uncles, Tootie, Tom, and Ira. Maya's mother was a beautiful woman who wasn't home very much. The times Bailey and Maya did see her were when she met them at a local tavern. Vivian danced to songs playing on the jukebox. I loved her most at those times, said Maya about her mother. She was like a pretty kite that floated just above my head. At school, Maya and Bailey were the best students because they had done so much reading and studying in Stamps. Maya spent their Saturdays at the local library. She loved having the whole day to read without any interruptions. Libraries and books, she said. Here I am. Read with me, Maya recalled. After about 6 months, Vivian and the children moved in with Vivian's boyfriend, whom they called Mr. Freeman. One day, when no one else was home, Mr. Freeman hurt Maya in a terrible way. He touched parts of her body that were private. Maya was only 7 years old. She was hurt so badly that she stayed in bed for several days. The only person she told was her brother. Bailey cried for his sister. Then he told their mother. And Vivian went to the police. Mr. Freeman was arrested for what he did, but he was released from jail after just one day. A few days after that, a policeman came to Maya's door. He told the family that Mr. Freeman had been found dead. Someone had murdered him. Maya couldn't believe it. She felt that Mr. Freeman must have died because she told Bailey about what happened. Maya was too young to understand that she hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, she had done the right thing by telling Bailey how Mr. Freeman had hurt her. But in her mind, Maya thought her words had killed Mr. Freeman. Oh, wow. Maya decided to stop talking. She didn't want anyone to get hurt again. Maya would not speak in school to her mother, her grandmother, her uncles. She would not even talk to Bailey. Vivian became frustrated with her daughter's silence. She didn't understand how sad and scared Maya was. She and Bailey were sent back to Stamps. Oh boy. Maya didn't speak to anyone for the next 5 years. Bailey did enough talking for both of them. He made up funny stories about what their life had been like in St. Louis. He told people they've got watermelons twice the size of a cow's head and sweeter than syrup. For her part, Maya kept journals of her thoughts and feelings. She fell in love with poetry and became even more interested in reading and writing. She thought of herself as a giant ear which could just absorb all sounds. I would go into a room and just eat up the sound, she said. I memorized so many poets. Finally, a close family friend in Stamps, well-educated woman named Bertha Flowers, helped Myra rediscover her voice. One day, Bertha invited Maya back to her house and read to her part of a novel, A Tale of Two Cities. It was by the famous writer Charles Dickens. Maya had already read the book, but she couldn't believe how beautiful the words sounded out loud. Maya thought Bertha's reading sounded like singing. Charles Dickens. You can check this out and pause and read about Charles Dickens. Chapter 3, The California Years. Looks like the San Francisco Bridge. In 1941, Mama made up her mind that it was time for Maya and Bailey to live with Vivian, who had moved to San Francisco, California. She thought they would have a chance to attend better schools on the West Coast. White people in Stamp did not treat black people fairly. She thought Bailey and Maya would be safer in California. Maya and Bailey, now 13 and 14, enjoyed living in San Francisco. They loved living near the San Francisco Bay. They loved the Golden Gate Bridge. They loved the Golden Gate Bridge and the red cable cars that went up and down the hills of the city streets. Maya continued to do well in high school. She tried out for a dance and drama program and won a scholarship to attend evening classes at a local college. In her free time, Maya read and wrote her own poetry and short stories. Vivian was now remarried to a man the children called Daddy Clydell, a successful businessman. Daddy Clydell was a loving and generous man, and Maya and Bailey thought of him as a father. Their real father, Bailey Sr., now lived in California as well. He came to visit them sometimes, and once he even took Maya on a trip to Mexico. As Maya and Bailey grew up, Bailey lost interest in school. He started to hang around troublemakers who didn't like to study and sometimes skipped school. He began fighting with Vivian, too. Bailey did not like to be told what time to come home or what to do. After one really big fight, he ran away from home. Running away from home. Maya was crushed when Bailey left. She began to have trouble with her schoolwork. She couldn't concentrate on her studies because she missed Bailey so much. Maya decided to take some time off from high school and look for a job. After months of showing up at the railroad offices begging for work, Maya was hired as a cable car conductor. She became the first African American conductor in the city of San Francisco. Maya was only 15 years old. 15 years old. Wow. San Francisco's cable car. Take a gander, pause the video and read. Pause and read. Maya worked as a cable car conductor for one whole semester. Then she realized how important it was to go back to school. After Bailey ran away, he joined the U.S. Merchant Marine, a fleet of ships that assist the Navy. He began to write letters to his sister. Maya was thrilled to be in touch with her brother again. Maya did well in high school, but during her senior year, she became pregnant. Still, she managed to stay in school. And in 1945, when she was 17, Maya graduated. 3 weeks after that, Maya gave birth to a baby boy, Clyde Bailey Johnson. She called him Guy. Maya and the baby's father did not want to get married. She knew she had to take care of her son on her own. Aww. Chapter 4, A Big Break. Over the next 7 years, Maya worked as a waitress and a cook to support her son. She lived in a tiny apartment in San Francisco most of the time, but also stayed briefly in Los Angeles and back in Stamps with Mama. All the while, Maya was writing poems and reading books every spare moment. In 1950, when Maya was 22 years old, she got a job as a clerk in a music store. At work, she met a sailor named Tosh Angelou. Maya and Tosh both loved music, and Tosh loved to spend time with Guy. He taught him how to play chess and baseball. Maya and Tosh married soon after meeting, but maybe too soon. It didn't take long for Maya to realize that she didn't have as much in common with Tosh as she thought. When they divorced, Maya decided to keep the last name Angelou, but she changed the last letter from S to U. She liked how unique the name sounded. From now on, she would be known as Maya Angelou. Maya no longer worked at the record store. She had begun working as a calypso dancer and singer at popular San Francisco nightclub called the Purple Onion. Maya had learned to dance during her high school years. At first, she was nervous to sing and dance on stage. She said, "My nerves shivered and the swallows in my stomach did nosedives." But once she began performing, she discovered she was a natural. She was tall and her legs long. Her long legs were perfect for dancing. And although Maya never had any formal singing lessons, she had a naturally deep and soulful voice. Who knew all this about Maya Angelou? Calypso music. I'm going to read calypso music. Yes, I love calypso music. Calypso is a type of music that began on the island country of Trinidad and Tobago in the 19th century. Slaves from West Africa had brought their calypso music with them to the Caribbean islands centuries earlier. Those rhymes or rhythms eventually became the lively modern day calypso. One of the biggest calypso stars in history is the Trinidadian calypsonian Lord Kitchener. Yes, Lord Kitchener. Woo woo. He has a song called Audrey. That's right. That's how I know about Lord Kitchener. Audrey, I'm just saying. He was born Aldwin Roberts, 1922 through 2000. Lord Kitchener became famous for hits such as Green Fig and Jump in the Line. Okay, back to Maya. In just a short time, Maya's performances became big news. Long lines of people formed outside the Purple Onion, waiting to see this dazzling woman. Sometimes Maya even wrote her own songs using the words from her poems. Here's the Purple Onion. Newspaper reporters began asking her for interviews. She even made guest appearances on radio and television shows. One evening, some other professional performers came to see Maya dance and sing. They were from a company, a group of dancers and singers, touring and performing the musical Porgy and Bess. The show is about African American life in the 1920s in Charleston, South Carolina. One of the people in charge of the show was so impressed with Maya's performance that he invited her to try out for a part in Porgy and Bess. Maya did and she got the part. Maya's mother agreed to take care of Guy while Maya was away. Although she was sad to leave Guy, now age 9, Maya felt like this was an opportunity she couldn't turn down. She joined the cast of Porgy and Bess and on a 22-nation tour across Europe and North Africa. Wow, beautiful. They would perform on stages all over the world. Maya couldn't wait. Chapter 5, Becoming a Writer. Becoming a writer. Maya loved seeing the world while touring with the cast of Porgy and Bess. They traveled to Canada, Italy, France, Egypt, and other parts of Africa. They performed in sold-out opera houses and received standing ovations when people stand up and clap for you. Maya discovered she was a natural at 14 languages and learned to speak French and Italian. She loved to explore and learn about new cultures in every city she visited. But Maya missed Guy, her son, terribly. When they spoke on the phone, the calls would end with both Maya and Guy in tears. After a year of traveling, Maya received a letter from her mother. Guy had become sick. He had developed a severe rash all over his body. Doctors couldn't seem to heal it. Maya returned home to be with her son. Back in San Francisco, Maya helped nurse her frail son back to health. She spent hours reading to him, taking him to the park, and cooking his favorite foods. She also made a promise to him that in the future, whenever she traveled, she would always bring him with her. Oh. "I swear to you, I'll never leave you again," she told Guy. When I go, you'll go with me or I won't go." While she was helping Guy in San Francisco, Maya received some sad news about her beloved brother Bailey. He was now in prison in New York for selling stolen goods. For a time, Maya stayed in California and sang and danced at local nightclubs. In 1957, she even had the chance to record an album called Miss Calypso. But Maya always felt like singing and dancing weren't her true calling. Throughout the years, Maya had written many poems, and she had always kept a journal. She knew that she really wanted to be a writer. She had lived through many hard times, but Maya had learned how to forgive and love. She wanted to share these hopeful messages with others. Maya and Guy were living in Los Angeles when she met John Oliver Killens, a famous writer from New York. John was in Los Angeles because one of his books was being made into a movie. He was writing the screenplay or script for the movie. Maya asked John to read some of her stories and poems. John thought Maya had a lot of talent. He encouraged her to move to New York City and join a group called the Harlem Writers Guild. Miss Calypso. The Harlem Writers Guild. This is about the Harlem Writers Guild. So you guys can read, pause, and read it. Pause and read it. When Maya first arrived in New York in 1959, she lived with John and his wife, Grace, until she was able to find a place where she and Guy could live on their own. Soon Maya found work as a singer in a nightclub. The singing job paid the rent and kept her days free to write. At first, I limited myself to short sketches, which is descriptions, said Maya about her writing. Then to song lyrics, then I dared short stories. Maya also wrote plays and poetry. When Maya first read a play she wrote called One Love, One Life at a Harlem Writers Guild meeting. She was so nervous her hands were sweaty and her tongue felt too big for her mouth. Once she finished the reading, she waited. Everyone in the group told her that her writing was terrible. Oh, wow. Maya was so hurt and angry. When John Clark, another member of the group, spoke to Maya afterward, he said, in this group, we remind each other that talent is not enough. You've got to work. Maya took his words to heart. She wanted to be a good writer, and now she knew what she would have to work hard to make happen. Chapter 6, Civil Rights Activist. Civil Rights Activist. One day in 1960, Maya and a friend, Godfrey Cambridge, an actor and comedian, went to listen to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak at a church in Harlem. Maya was inspired by Dr. King's words of peace and equal rights for everybody, no matter the color of their skin. Maya and Jeffrey decided to put on a show to raise money for Dr. King and his group, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. The group worked towards gaining civil rights for Black people in America. What are civil rights? I'm going to read it, but I'm also going to place it here so you can pause and read it if you like to. Civil rights are the freedoms granted to citizens by their government in the United States, these rights are guaranteed and protected by the Constitution. They include the freedom of speech, the right to vote, and the right to worship any religion that you want to. These rights are spelled out in a written statement called the Bill of Rights, which is part of the Constitution. When slavery was abolished after the Civil War, Black people were denied their civil rights, including the right to vote. They were segregated in the poorest schools and offered only low-paying jobs. Beginning in the 1950s, there was a national movement to end segregation and discrimination. The civil rights movement for Black Americans was led by a young minister named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Through nonviolent protest actions, such as sitting at counters in white-only restaurants, they weren't welcome. Civil rights activists eventually changed the laws in the United States to include all of its citizens. Back to Maya. Maya and Godfrey called their show Cabaret for Freedom, and it featured black singers and dancers at a jazz club in New York City. The show was a smashing success on opening night and continued to be a big hit for 5 straight weeks. The ticket sales of the show helped raise $9,000 for Dr. King's cause. Dr. King's group, the SCLC, asked Maya to become their regional coordinator. Maya happily accepted the job. Her duties included fundraising, organizing volunteers, and speaking on behalf of the SCLC. After 2 months, she met Dr. King for the first time. He thanked her for all her hard work. Around this same time, Maya had her first short story published. It appeared in a Cuban magazine called Revolution. Hope I'm not messing up the pronunciation. Forgive me if I am. That it would appear only in Cuba and probably in Spanish did not dilute the fact that I was joining the elite group of published writers, Maya said. In 1960, Maya met a man from South Africa named Vusumzi. Vus make at a dinner party in New York. At the time, South Africa had a white-run government that did not give black people in the country any rights. Just like Martin Luther King Jr. fought for the rights of black people in America, Vus fought for the rights of black people in South Africa. This is Vusum. Oh, his last name is Make. Vusumzi Make. Vus was in the United States to speak to the United Nations, an organization of countries that fight for peace and human rights around the world, about his country's racial policy. Maya and Vus hit it off instantly. They soon moved in together. Vus continued to travel and speak about human rights around the world. Maya stopped working for the SCLC. Instead, she and a friend formed a new organization called the Cultural Association for Women of African Heritage, or CAWAH. This organization worked to support human rights in both the United States and in South Africa. While working for CAWAH, Maya met another famous civil rights leader, Malcolm X. Although Maya had met Malcolm X only briefly, she was in awe of his energy and commitment to the civil rights movement. He believed that black people should show pride in themselves and their African heritage. After living together in New York for less than a year, Vus asked Maya to move with him to Cairo, Egypt. He planned to meet and work there with freedom fighters, those who were working hard to gain independence for their countries from other African nations. Maya was always eager for a new adventure. She was ready to leave the United States again, but this time, just as she had promised years ago, she would bring Guy with her. She brought her son. Malcolm X. You can pause and read about Malcolm X. There is also a Malcolm X movie. Check it out. Pause and read. Chapter 7, Home Away from Home. Home Away from Home. When Maya and Guy arrived in Cairo in 1961, the streets and sidewalks were filled with cars, people, and goats, mules, and camels. Maya asked their driver if it was a holiday. The driver answered her, "No, this is just everyday Cairo." Maya and Guy loved all this excitement. They also came to realize that people, no matter what country they live in, aren't so very different. Peoples cry, laugh, eat, worry, and die, Maya later wrote. If we try to understand each other, we may even become friends. Vus had rented a lovely furnished apartment for his family in Cairo. 15-year-old Guy began high school just minutes outside of the city. Maya spent her days with Vus, meeting and talking with freedom fighters and other people from countries like Uganda and Kenya. A couple of months after moving to Egypt, Maya got a job as an editor for an English language magazine called The Arab Observer. She wrote and edited stories about events happening all over the African continent. Maya worked at the magazine for over a year. By then, Guy was ready to start college. He chose to attend the University of Ghana in West Africa. Maya decided to go with Guy and live in the city of Accra while he was in school. Vus stayed behind in Cairo. When Maya and Guy arrived in Ghana, they immediately felt like they belonged there. Ghana was an independent African country. In 1957, it had been the first African country in the region to break free from its ruling power, Great Britain. By 1962, all Ghana's black people were being treated equally, unlike in the United States and other countries around the world. One night, shortly after they arrived, Guy was in a terrible car accident. His neck was broken in 3 places and his arm and leg were fractured. For the next 2 months, Guy stayed in the hospital. Maya visited her son every day. Guy eventually recovered and was finally able to begin his studies at the University of Ghana. Maya found a job as an office assistant at the university. This way, she could care for her son, who was still recovering. Maya also began to write for the newspaper in the Ghanaian Times. She reconnected with friends she had known from the Harlem Writers Guild who had since moved to Ghana. Their names were Julian Mayfield and Dr. Anna Livia Cordero, his wife. One night, Julian and Anna invited Maya to a dinner party where Maya had the chance to see Malcolm X again. Before traveling back to the United States, he had stopped to see his old friends. After Malcolm returned to New York, he wrote letters to Maya back in Ghana. Malcolm had remembered the work Maya had done for Dr. King as well, for the Cultural Association for Women of African Heritage. In one of his letters, Malcolm asked Maya if she would consider coming back to New York to work for a group he had founded, the Organization of African American Unity, OAAU. Maya discussed it with Guy. They both decided this was something that was important for her to do. Guy, now 19, who was also ready for more independence, he stayed in Ghana to continue his studies, and Maya headed back to America. It was February 1965, and Maya had been living abroad for 4 years. She was ready to return home. Chapter 8, Becoming a Famous Writer. Maya, now age 37, decided to visit her mother and her brother, Bailey, before she started work in New York City. Maya flew from Ghana to San Francisco, where her mother still lived. Bailey was out of jail and working as a chef in Hawaii. He flew to California to see his mother and his sister. The siblings had written each other over the years, but had not seen each other in a long time. Maya spent the weekend reconnecting with her mom and brother. They talked and laughed. They shared happy memories from when Maya and Bailey were children. On February 21st, 1965, a Sunday morning, Maya heard the terrible news that Malcolm X had been assassinated. February 21st, 1965. Malcolm X was assassinated. He was shot and killed while speaking for the OAAU in Harlem. Deeply saddened and with no reason to move back to New York, Maya went to Hawaii with Bailey. She worked as a nightclub singer for 6 months. Then Maya returned to California where Guy, now a college graduate, had come to live. But shortly after her arrival, a truck slammed into Guy and the parked car he was sitting in. Man, His neck was broken again. Maya visited her son every day. When Guy was finally on his way to full recovery, Maya moved back to New York City to write with the Harlem Writers Guild again. She was determined to pursue her writing career. Over the next couple of years in New York, Maya wrote 2 plays. She also worked on her poetry. One night, she went to see Martin Luther King Jr. speak at Carnegie Hall. Afterwards, Maya and her friends met with Dr. King. He asked Maya if she would come and work for him again. This time, he asked her to travel around the country and ask churches to help support his cause, and Maya agreed. On April 4th, 1968, Maya was getting ready to go to her 40th birthday party. She was supposed to start working for Dr. King in the next few days. A friend rushed over to Maya's apartment and told her that Dr. King had been shot and killed in Memphis, Tennessee. April 4th, 1968. Maya was crushed by Dr. King's death and did not leave her apartment for weeks. Friends were afraid she would stop speaking again, just like she had when she was a young girl. Finally, James Baldwin, a friend of the Harlem Writers Guild, helped Maya break free of her sadness. And you can read about James Baldwin right here. Just go ahead and pause and read. Pause and read James Baldwin. James Baldwin, along with other friends, encouraged Maya to write her own life story. They told her to share the stories of how she had survived so much pain and sorrow. Maya took their advice. She decided to write her first autobiography. An autobiography is a true story of the writer's life that the writer writes themselves. She called the book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. We were just teaching this to my students last week. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. The title came from a famous line in the poem Sympathy by Paul Laurence Dunbar. The poem was about a bird that wanted its freedom. Maya used this title to mean she sometimes felt like a bird in a cage too. She wanted to be free from the cage of abuse, racism, poverty, and cruelty. The stories Maya told about her childhood were full of sadness, but also full of hope. Maya thought that no matter how hard life can be, people can survive and learn to be happy. The book was published in 1969 and it became a bestseller. Maya was now a famous writer. My girl Maya Angelou. Chapter 9, A Hero to Us All. A Hero to Us All. Maya was living in New York when her first collection of poems, Just Give Me a Cool Drink of Water, For I Die, were published. It came out just 2 years after her best-selling autobiography. The 38 poems express what it was like to be a black woman in the United States. Her poems were meant to be read out loud. I write for the voice, not the eye, she said. Maya's poem, Harlem Hopscotch, addresses the hardship black children have faced over time. 1 foot down, then hop. It's hot. Good things for the ones that's got. Another jump, now to the left. Everybody for himself. In the air, now both feet down. Since you black, don't stick around. Food is gone, rent is due. Curse and cry, then jump too. Wow. I've never read that before and I love it. I'm taken aback by this poem. Or this right there. It's called Harlem Hopscotch. Love it. Just Give Me a Cool of Drink Water Before I Die was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize in 1972. In the United States, this award is one of the highest honors an author can receive. That same year, Maya became the first African-American woman to have her own screenplay. The script for a movie produced. The story, called Georgia, Georgia, was about a young black woman who falls in love with a white man. In addition to writing the screenplay, Maya wrote the music for the film too. She wrote the music too. Whoa! Even though she was now very busy, Maya found time to star in a Broadway play called Look Away. In 1973, she received a Tony nomination, the highest award for U.S. Stage actors for her performance. Maya was now living the life of a famous author and writing as many as 16 hours a day. She traveled a lot and attended fancy dinner parties. While visiting London, Maya met Paul Dufour, a British writer and cartoonist. They soon fell in love and married. Maya was 45 years old and world famous. She and Paul moved to California just outside of San Francisco. Paul Dufour. They both spent much of their time writing. Maya's son Guy was also married and had a son of his own named Colin. Guy and his family lived close to Maya and Paul. In 1977, Maya had a role in a miniseries on a television show called Roots. You guys remember Roots? A popular show about the history of American slavery. Maya received an Emmy nomination for playing a grandmother called Nayo Boto. Nayo Boto. I don't think I knew that was Maya Angelou back when I used to watch it. I am going to watch it again. Roots. Read this about roots in Kunta Kinte. Read it. Pause and read it. In 1978, Maya's third book of poems, And Still I Rise, was published. It included one of Maya's most well-known poems, Still I Rise. The poem began, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise." Wow, isn't that beautiful? In 1981, Maya and Paul divorced after 8 years of marriage. Although they remained friends, they were both too busy to make life work as a couple. During these years, Maya was also giving speeches and reading her poems at different universities across the country. She was a beloved author who had a kind word and genuine smile for everyone she met. In her speeches, she shared what she learned through her personal experiences. She spread her message of peace and unity. Peace and unity. And still I rise. One can never know too many good people, Maya said. I have learned that a friend may be waiting behind a stranger's smile. Maya soon accepted a position at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. As a professor of American Studies, most college professors have a doctorate or at least graduate degree, but Maya had never even gone to college. Imagine that. How smart she was. Maya continued to write in North Carolina while teaching students about history and poetry. Even without a college degree, Maya had plenty of life experience to share with her students. "I'm not a writer who teaches," she once said in an interview. "I'm a teacher who writes." Maya continued to deliver countless lectures and poetry readings all over the country over the next 30 years. She spoke about the importance of forgiveness and the strength of the human spirit. People loved her strong musical voice. They respected her for surviving so many tough and disappointing times. She had never given up. She was not bitter. Instead, Maya was graceful and loving, and she poured her heart into her words and her work. People were inspired by her strength and spirit. In 1993, Maya was honored to read her poem, On the Pulse of Morning, at the inauguration of President Bill Clinton. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Look at this. Maya worked day and night writing the poem. Although her final poem was only 67 words, she had filled more than 200 handwritten pages with ideas before it was finally finished. The poem was instantly popular. It encouraged people to be hopeful about the future, no matter how bad the past has been. Yes. President Clinton loved every word. He said she was without a voice for 5 years, and then she developed the greatest voice on the planet. The famous poet Robert Frost had been the only other person to read a poem at an inauguration, and that had been over 30 years earlier. Over the years, Maya had developed a strong friendship with television host Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey. They called each other mother sister friends to express their closeness. Maya appeared on Oprah's popular television show countless times, which introduced her writing and her ideas to a huge television audience. In 2000, Maya was awarded the National Medal of Arts. In 2005, she wrote the poem Amazing Peace, a Christmas poem, for President George W. Bush, and she delivered the poem at that year's Christmas tree lighting ceremony. In 2010, President Barack Obama presented her with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It is the highest honor that a civilian, someone not in the military, can receive. During the ceremony, Maya's writing was described as teaching us to reach across division and honor the beauty of our world. The beauty of our world. Most importantly, Maya continued to teach people how every person can rise from tragedy and hardship to live a meaningful life. Her message had always been one of love, hope, and courage. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel, she famously said. On May 28, 2014, Maya Angelou died peacefully in her home in North Carolina. She was 86 years old. The U.S. Postal Service honored Maya with her own stamp on April 7, 2015, less than a year after her death. On the stamp was a portrait of Maya as well as one of her quotes. A bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. Look at that. Over the course of her lifetime, Maya published more than 30 books, including 11 autobiographies and 14 books of poetry. She also wrote 5 children's books, including Life Doesn't Frighten Me, which was based on one of her poems. Most of her books were bestsellers. After she died, many celebrities and past U.S. presidents spoke about what Maya and her work meant to them. Maya had befriended almost every important Black leader, writer, and activist, from Martin Luther King Jr. to President Barack Obama, and everyone wanted the chance to pay tribute. Maya was many things: an author, a poet, civil rights activist, playwright, actress, director, composer, singer, dancer. But above all, she was a storyteller, and her greatest stories were true, said President Barack Obama. A childhood of suffering and abuse actually drove her to stop speaking, but the voice she found helped generations of Americans find their rainbow amidst the clouds and inspired the rest of us to be our best selves. Maya Angelou, you guys. Celebration, says a celebration of rising joy, Dr. Maya Angelou. The end. So here's a timeline of Maya Angelou's life and then a timeline of the world side by side. I will put it up so you can pause and read. I'm trying to make it straight so you guys can pause and read. Pause it and read it. The end. Wow. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. who was Maya Angelou. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate you listening to me read fun, exciting books like this. Educational, interesting, and you learn so much about Maya Angelou. But thank you again for being here. Shout out to my mom, who's always here. Shout out to everyone who shares my videos, especially Victoria and Ellie. Yes, all right, you guys. Thank you so very much. Yes, here at Audrey's Reading Area. Don't forget to click like, click share. Go to YouTube. Go to Audrey's Reading Area. Smash that subscribe button, all right? All right. I will see you again tomorrow. Live, Live, live at 8, you guys. See you soon. Audrey's Reading Area.